It was 2 in the morning when I pressed my face against the cold glass of my bedroom window and watched 3 teenagers laugh as they cannonballed into my pool. They thought they were untouchable, just kids having fun trespassing like my backyard was their personal water park. But that night was different. I wasn't just watching anymore, I was waiting. I had a plan, and by sunrise they'd finally learn what consequences feel like. For months I'd put up with this insanity. Every few nights the same trio sneaking through the broken board on my fence, stripping down to their underwear, blasting music and swimming until dawn. They'd leave beer cans floating in the water, wet footprints across my deck, and crushed flowers where they'd trampled my garden. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I barely get 5 hours of sleep on a good night, and instead of rest, I was left scrubbing my pool at sunrise, dragging my exhausted body into work like a zombie. The first time it happened, I did what any normal person would do. I called the cops. An officer showed up 40 minutes later, long after the kids had vanished, leaving nothing behind but a broken skimmer. He shrugged and said, "Kids will be kids. Maybe install some lights. Maybe get a dog." The second time, I stormed outside in my bathrobe, screaming like a lunatic. They laughed at me. One of them yelled, "Crazy old lady, get a life." Crazy old lady. I was 34. The third time, I tried reasoning. I begged them to stop. The pink-haired girl smirked, dove into the pool, and sent a wave of water all over my medical textbooks. That was the moment something inside me snapped. No more cops. No more begging. If they wanted a game, I'd play it better than they ever imagined. So that night, when I saw them hop the fence again, I didn't hide. I slid open the glass door, stepped out barefoot, and said, calm as anything, "Sit down. We need to talk." You should have seen their faces. Shock, then smirks, then fear when I called them by name. Derek Morrison, the mechanic's kid. Chloe Martinez, daughter of the very cop who told me to get a dog. And Kyle Santos, the shy sophomore bagging groceries at the store where I shop every week. These weren't strangers, they were neighbors, which made their betrayal sting even more. "Look, lady, we don't want trouble," Kyle muttered. Derek tried to swim away like this was some awkward misunderstanding. Chloe tried to act tough. But when I said, "I know your addresses, I know your parents, and I've got everything on camera," their bravado cracked. I told them the rules. They would clean my pool, replace my flowers, fix my fence, and if they refused, I'd be making phone calls to their parents, to the cops, to anyone who needed to hear the truth. For the first time in months, I saw something new in their eyes, fear. Good. They should have been scared. The next morning, I drank coffee by the window and watched Derek skimming my pool like it was a crime scene. Chloe dug in the flower bed with trembling hands, and Kyle hammered at the fence like he'd never touched a tool in his life. It should have felt like victory, but as I watched, doubt started creeping in. I caught myself thinking, am I going too far? Am I turning into the very monster they accuse me of being? I almost walked outside and told them to leave, almost convinced myself to let it go. But then I remembered the nights lying awake, the mocking laughter, the water soaking my textbooks, the officer shrugging like my peace didn't matter. No, this wasn't cruelty. This was justice. And I wasn't stopping. That night I upped the stakes. I gathered them again and laid out more than chores. I brought up a party they thought I didn't know about. I looked Derek dead in the eye and said, "Do you know what Rohypnol is?" His face drained of color. I told him about Amanda Pierce, the girl who passed out upstairs that night, who woke up confused and broken. The hospital records, the whispers. Derek stammered, swore he hadn't touched her, swore he just stood there. That was the problem. He stood there and did nothing. Chloe gasped. Kyle's jaw dropped, and suddenly it wasn't just about my pool anymore. It was about secrets they thought were buried. I saw them crumble, and in that moment I realized I had them exactly where I wanted them. I pulled out a thick envelope, photos, screenshots, proof of everything. I placed it on the table like a loaded gun and told them they had two choices. Go home, confess to their parents, face the police, and watch their families implode. Or stay. Keep doing exactly as I said. learn what it meant to repair the damage they'd caused, not just to my home, but to themselves. They stayed. Of course they stayed. For weeks they were mine. Their evenings, their weekends, all belonged to me. Derek scrubbing algae until his hands blistered. Chloe planting flowers with swollen eyes from crying. Kyle hammering boards until his palms bled. But that wasn't enough. Chores don't teach lessons. Pain does. So I sent Derek to a women's shelter to sit in a room full of survivors and listen to their stories until he couldn't look anyone in the eye. And one night, I arranged for him to meet Amanda herself. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. I heard later he broke down sobbing, admitting what he'd seen, begging her for forgiveness she couldn't give. He left that room shattered. Good. He needed to shatter before he could change. Chloe, the cop's daughter, who thought rules didn't apply to her. I made her work under the gaze of neighbors, humiliated in the same community she disrespected. And Kyle, poor Kyle. I forced him to face the reality of what shame does to a family barely holding it together. By the time I called them back to my yard for the final confrontation, they were ghosts of the cocky kids who once mocked me. They stood in front of me, trembling, waiting for the axe to fall. Derek finally whispered, "What do you want from us?" What did I want? I wanted my peace back. I wanted them to understand that actions have consequences that you don't get to take and destroy without paying a price. I wanted them to remember my face every time they thought about crossing another line. So I leaned in, smiled, and said, "For the next month you belong to me. And when it's over, maybe, just maybe, you'll leave here better than you came." Their jaws clenched, their eyes dropped, and I knew then I'd won. The balance of power had shifted. They weren't in control anymore. I was. That was the night the trespassing ended. That was the night 3 kids learned the hard way that some neighbors don't roll over, don't shrug it off, don't just buy a dog. Some of us fight back. And when we do, we make sure the lesson lasts forever. Because here's the truth. Respect isn't given. It's earned. And if you can't give it willingly, someone like me will make sure you learn it the hard way.